World of Warcraft's Season of Discovery looks to really shake things up as far as the established vanilla meta. Warlocks in particular are looking like an incredibly powerful option for every facet of the game. From PvP to dungeons, solo and raids, I would bet Warlocks will be incredibly high demand. While we only have a small teaser of what is to come, I figured we could at least talk about some build ideas based on what was released at BlizzCon, assuming they don't mess with any of the talents before release. Most of this theory crafting will focus at the higher levels where you actually have a mostly completed build, because unfortunately at the initial cap of 25 you'll have at most 14 points to spend on your talents, which, while enough to make a difference in the overall power of your character, won't be anywhere as game changing as the 40, 50, 60 builds when your most powerful talents start to come online. Starting out, we'll take a look at the more hyped spec announced, Tank Warlock. Based on the runes released in a vacuum, we could see two styles emerging for tanks depending on what the fight calls for. The first would be an uber survivalist build using the Metamorphosis rune, Master Channeler, and Demonic Grace combined with Soul Link and Master Demologist. With 500% armor, 6% crit reduction combined with 2 out of 2 improved Hellstone, Soulstone, Soul Link Voidwalker, which empowered by Master Demologist also gives you a 10% physical damage reduction and can be sacrificed for a shield in a pinch for physical bosses, or major resistances plus an interrupt with the Fel Pup against caster bosses. What does it matter if the pet dies? They can be immediately resummoned at a 0.5 casting speed thanks to Fel domination every 15 minutes. Oh, and to cap it all off with a non-channel beefed up 15-second drain life. Regardless if you're playing PvE or PvP, you'll most likely feel like the closest thing to the Juggernaut in the WoW universe. This would probably be better served as a progression-based build before you start really getting your first, second, third bisp, plus being nice to your healers by not being a squishy one-shot tank. Taking inspiration from the Fury Warrior tanks in Vanilla Classic, you want to stack just enough defenses to not get one-shot by the boss and spend the rest of the talents and stats into damage. You start by foregoing the Soul Link option, instead speccing down into Demonic Sacrifice and grabbing Ruin like your stereotypical Succubus Demonic Sacrifice build. But instead we'll be sacking your imp to give you a literal 15% fire damage increase and an also 15% threat increase on top of the 100% threat increase from Metamorphosis. You'll also still have the 2 out of 2 improved Hellstones, Soulstone, but by trading in Soul Link for Ruin and losing out on Conflag, you choose rune options that will actually cover those and give you more threat. So the rune options we're going to choose is Lake of Fire, Metamorphosis, and Incinerate. Demonic Tactics wouldn't be a bad option, nor Master Channeler, but if you can micromanage rank 1 Wanker Fires, Lake of Fire will produce the most damage on average we think, as well as threat. Stacking all that plus fire damage between proc, sacks, and 4 out of 5 Ember Stem, you will receive 88% extra fire damage and threat, and an extra 5% crit from Devastation before any other buffs like Trinkets or Demonic Pact. This would probably fall more towards a farm or speedrun build because you want to have a high crit and spell power plus whatever max hit is for the phase to support all the extra fire damage at the cost of making it even harder on your healers by being a squishy tank. For once, at least on paper, Warlocks have a variety of different DPS specs to really choose from. In theory, gone are the days where if you rated as a Warlock, your options boiled down to SM Ruin or more commonly Demonic Sacrifice Ruin. However, don't worry if you enjoyed those builds, they only get better with the introduction of runes. One big change to the Demonic Sacrifice build is the fire theme. It's looking to be incredibly viable, and honestly if you spec into the fire option, you have a sort of catch-all build that would only require you to switch out your hand rune from Metamorphosis to Chaos Bolt and switch up your rotation a bit. The talent setup is basically the same as the Fury Warlock build, so switching between the two as the situation calls wouldn't be a big deal. However, if you wanted to go the more shadow route, you could take 5 out of 5 Corruption as the normal build calls for, plus pair it with the Master Channeler rune, Haunt rune, and Everlasting Affliction rune. You become a single target machine able to theoretically snapshot your Corruption and keep it going the whole time with a plus 15% damage buff from sacking your Succubus, and plus 20% damage from Haunt. Life tapping would also be way less of an issue between the healing from Haunt and Master Channeler drain life. Need to do good AoE damage? Then just swap out the Haunt rune for the Shadow Volley rune and go at it. Holy crap, let's start off by just saying, at least on paper, Affliction looks incredibly viable and may even become the top DPS spec for Warlocks. So many customization options. For the chest you have Master Channeler Demonic Tactics, but between the two we'd probably go with Master Channeler. For the gloves you have Haunt or Shadow Bolt Volley, and for those you would depend on what the fight calls for, whether it's a single target fight or AoE fight. And for the pants, Everlasting Affliction seems like the easy choice on the surface, but Demonic Pact could be a sleeper pick giving you and your raid a crap ton of spell power. And that is one of the advantages of this spec over Demonic Sacrifice Ruin, is that it keeps their pet alive instead of sacrificing them. That means you could be a huge raid buff to your raid, but still pull decent flexible DPS, since Pack is a rune, not talent based as it is in Wrath the Lich King. Lastly, the only DPS spec with a 10% spell hit for Affliction spells from talent is, ironically, the Affliction tree. Lastly, with the introduction of Demonic Pack in the Season of Discovery, it opens up the possibility of a Warlock playing a true support class like Demonic Warlocks and Wrath the Lich King, but freeing us up to more freely choose what spec we want to choose, since it's not talent based but rune based. You'd obviously be taking Demonic Pack rune for your legs, most likely Demonic Tactics on your chest, but your gloves will be a more personal choice with how you want to focus your damage between AoE, single target, and then also fire or shadow. Take Chaos Bolt if you'll be preferring to stick more to the fire side of things, or if you want to go with Shadow, take Haunt. Lastly, it never hurts to have more AoEs like Shadow Volley, especially since we only have the 2 fire ones built into the class by default in Classic. Much like in Wrath the Lich King, you'll be sacrificing your secondary stats like hit, crit, and stamina intellect to stack as much spell power as possible for the biggest Demonic Pack buff. However, we also want to caution against a ton of hype for this spec, simply because we don't know what the new itemization looks like, and we don't even know if it'd be as viable as it is in Wrath the Lich King. Thank you for those of you who have made it this far. These were just some opening thoughts we had for theory crafting playstyles and builds for the new upcoming Season of Discovery. Be sure to check back once it's released for our classic Season of Discovery Let's Plays and Guides. Have a good night and take it easy.